Buy your bread. Buy your freshly baked bread. Why is she dressed like that? A medical doctor selling bread? The market people whisper. Come and buy bread. Come and buy freshly baked bread. We must make sure our daughter gets the best education, no matter what it takes. In the heart of Lagos, where the streets never slept and the air buzzed with the hum of commerce, there lived a man called Adebayo. He is hard-working and has done different menial jobs to earn a living for his wife and daughter. None had paid up. So one day he set to think of something he could do to make more money. Since he did not go to school, he wanted his daughter to go to school. Then he remembered that he learned how to bake bread from his late mom. Then one morning he called his wife. Mama Adeshola, please come, I need to discuss something with you, he said. Then she came and sat by him, and then he said, Mama Adeshola, remember I told you my late mom used to bake bread and people will come to our small hut back then to buy from her in large quantities. Yes, you did. Okay, so I want us to start that business since I can bake. No need to buy from outside. I think we will make enough money to train our daughter in school, he said. That is a good idea, Mrs. Adebayo said. And so they started baking inside their small house and hawking bread by the roadside in the bustling city of Lagos and making good profit, and so they were able to train their daughter from primary school up to the university selling bread. They feel fulfilled to see their only child in the university. The Adebayo family toiled tirelessly to make a living. Every day, they stood under the scorching sun or braved the unpredictable Lagos rains, determined to keep their family afloat. Their earnings was not enough again since their daughter went to the university, but their dreams were grand. They had looked for a child for many years after they had Adeshola, their only child, but all to no avail, and so they wanted their only child, Adesola, to achieve what they never could. Adesola, a 22-year-old medical student at the University of Lagos, carried the weight of her parents' sacrifices on her shoulders. She dreamed of becoming a doctor, not for wealth or prestige, but to care for her aging parents and ensure they would never suffer from illnesses they couldn't afford to treat. Her textbooks were stained with sweat and tears from nights spent studying under the dim light of their small apartment. Despite the ridicule from some of her wealthier classmates who sneered at her modest background, Adesola remained focused on her goal. Every morning, as her parents prepared their bread for the day's sales, Adesola would join them for a short prayer. One day, she often whispered to herself, I will make you proud. I will take care of you the way you've taken care of me. But as the days passed, the unpredictable hand of destiny loomed closer. Adesola's mornings always began the same way, waking up before dawn, helping her parents package freshly baked loaves, and preparing for another long day at school. The smell of bread filled their tiny apartment, a mix of warmth and hardship that defined their lives. Though her parents insisted she focus solely on her studies, Adesola often joined them at their roadside stand before heading to the university. You can't do it all solo, her father would say. But Adesola would always reply, every loaf sold brings me closer to becoming a doctor. Her parents will laugh each time she said this. At school, Adesola faced a starkly different world. Her classmates arrived in flashy cars, wore designer clothes, and carried expensive gadgets. Meanwhile, Adesola relied on her well-worn textbooks and worn-out clothes. Some of her peers mocked her humble background. The bread seller's daughter, they'd whisper with cruel laughter. But she bore their scorn with quiet dignity. Adesola's focus was unwavering. She had promised herself and her parents that she would succeed no matter what. One afternoon, during a class break, Adesola sat alone, reviewing her notes. A shadow fell over her desk, and when she looked up, she saw Connell, the most popular rich kid in the faculty, wealthy, humble, and admired by all. Connell had a way of making people feel seen. Always studying, Adesola? He asked with a smile. She nodded, surprised by his attention. You have big dreams, don't you? He added before walking away. His words stayed with her, like a light piercing through the shadows of doubt cast by others. One fateful morning, the Adebayo family prepared for another busy day. The Lagos streets were already alive with activities as hawkers, commuters, and drivers filled the city. Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo loaded their bread into a bread tray, ready for the day's sales. Adesola kissed her parents goodbye before heading to school. The day felt ordinary, but a strange unease lingered in the air. Adesola couldn't shake the feeling as she sat in her anatomy lecture, listening to the professor talk about the human heart. Her mind wandered to her parents, picturing them weaving through the chaotic Lagos traffic with their baskets of bread. She whispered a prayer under her breath, asking for their safety. Later that afternoon, as she left the lecture hall, her phone rang. It was a neighbor from their street, in the market Adesola. The voice trembled. "There's been an accident, your parents." The words hit her like a tidal wave. Her hands shook, and the phone slipped from her grasp. The world around her blurred, and her knees buckled as tears streamed down her face. Adesola arrived at the hospital in a daze, her heart pounding as though it would burst from her chest. The chaotic bustle of nurses and patients blurred around her as she searched for answers. A sympathetic doctor guided her to a quiet room, where he delivered the devastating news. Both her parents had been victims of a reckless driver who ran a red light. They hadn't survived the impact. Time seemed to stand still as Adesola's world collapsed. She sat frozen, tears streaming down her face, clutching the last remnants of her parents' belongings, a small crumpled bread basket and her father's worn cap. Questions swirled in her mind. How could life be so cruel? How could she continue without them? Their sacrifices had been for her, and now they were gone, leaving her alone in a world that suddenly felt unbearably cold. That evening, back in their tiny apartment, the silence was deafening. Every corner reminded her of them, the smell of freshly baked bread, the small stove they had used, and their shared prayers before each day began. Despite her grief, one thing became clear: she couldn't let their sacrifices be in vain. Adesola vowed to continue selling bread to pay for her education, even if it meant enduring ridicule and hardship. The morning after her parents' burial, Adesola tied a scarf around her head and set out to continue the family business. With a heavy heart, she carried a basket of bread to their usual spot by the roadside. Every step was a battle, but she knew she couldn't afford to stop. Her dream of becoming a doctor wasn't just for her anymore, it was for her parents, whose love and sacrifices had given her a fighting chance. As she stood by the roadside, familiar faces approached her, offering condolences. Some vendors praised her courage, while others whispered behind her back, wondering how long she could endure the grueling life her parents had led. Adesola ignored them, focusing on the sales. The mocking laughter of passers-by cut deep, but she refused to let their words break her spirit. At school, the ridicule grew louder. Her classmates, who already mocked her humble background, now targeted her even more. "The bread girl," they sneered, laughing as she walked past. Yet, amidst the mockery, Connell's quiet encouragement stood out. He didn't join the jeers. Instead, he observed her from afar, his admiration growing for the girl who worked tirelessly to uphold her parents' legacy. Connell watched Adesola with growing interest, captivated by her resilience and determination. Unlike the others who judged her for her poverty, Connell saw the strength in her struggles. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling lecture, he approached her. "Adesola," he said softly, "can I buy a loaf of bread from you?" His request startled her, but she nodded hesitantly, reaching into her bag for one of the loaves she had wanted to eat. As he handed her the money, Connell smiled warmly. "You're the most hard-working person I've ever met," he said. "Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Adesola blinked back tears at his words. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small glimmer of hope. His kindness reminded her that not everyone looked down on her for her struggles. That evening, as Adesola prepared for another day, she thought about Connell's words. They echoed in her mind, strengthening her resolve. She didn't know why he was different from the others, but his encouragement felt like a lifeline in the sea of loneliness and ridicule she faced. She whispered a prayer, asking for strength to keep going. Days turned into weeks, and Adesola adjusted to her new routine. She would wake before dawn to bake bread, head to her roadside stall for a few hours, and then rush to the university for her lectures. Each day was grueling, but she found strength in her parents' memory. Every loaf she sold felt like a step closer to fulfilling their dream of seeing her graduate as a doctor. Her classmates, however, showed no mercy. Some openly mocked her, while others offered fake sympathy, thinly veiling their disdain. "Isn't it embarrassing? A future doctor selling bread on the roadside?" one girl sneered during a lunch break. Adesola bit her lip and ignored the comment, but the words stung. She reminded herself that her work was honorable. Her parents had always said so. Connell noticed the strain on Adesola's face one afternoon as she sat under a tree, reviewing her notes. He approached her with a bottle of water. "Take a break," he urged, sitting beside her. His presence was a comfort she hadn't realized she needed. "You're doing great, Adesola," he said sincerely. His words lit a small spark of gratitude in her heart. She didn't say much, but her soft thank you spoke volumes. Connell began seeking out Adesola more frequently, always finding ways to encourage her without drawing too much attention. Unlike his wealthy friends who cared more about appearances, Connell admired Adesola's strength. He found himself drawn to her determination and humility, qualities rare among their peers. As the months passed, Adesola and Connell's friendship deepened. They spent more time together, often sharing conversations about their dreams and struggles. Connell confided in her about the pressure he felt from his wealthy family to pursue a career in politics, while Adesola spoke of her late parents and her unwavering dream of becoming a doctor. Their bond didn't go unnoticed. Some of Connell's friends teased him for associating with the bread seller, but he dismissed their comments with ease. "She's more hard-working than all of us combined," he retorted, silencing their mockery. For Adesola, Connell's unwavering support became a source of strength. One evening, as they walked together after class, Connell asked, "Do you ever think about giving up?" Adesola shook her head. "I can't," she replied firmly. "My parents gave everything for me to be here. I owe it to them, and to myself, to keep going." Her determination inspired Connell, who began to see his own privileged life in a new light. One evening, as Adesola packed up her bread stall after a long day, she noticed a sleek black car parked nearby. To her surprise, Connell stepped out, dressed in casual yet expensive clothes. He approached her with a sheepish smile. "I thought I'd surprise you," he said, holding out a bag of food. "You've been working too hard to eat properly." Adesola hesitated, feeling a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. Connell shrugged. "Maybe not, but I wanted to. You deserve it." His sincerity touched her, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax. They sat on a nearby bench, sharing the meal and talking about their dreams. Connell spoke of his desire to break free from his family's expectations and do something meaningful with his life. Adesola listened intently, surprised by the vulnerability he showed. In that moment, she realized that behind his wealth and charm was someone just as burdened by expectations as she was. Their bond deepened as they discovered the strength they drew from each other. Over time, Adesola and Connell's friendship blossomed into something deeper. Connell began accompanying her to the roadside stall when his schedule allowed, much to the shock of her customers and passers-by. "What is a boy like him doing here?" people whispered, but Connell seemed unfazed. He admired Adesola's unwavering commitment to her work and studies, even under such harsh conditions. Adesola, on the other hand, struggled with mixed feelings. While she appreciated Connell's support, she couldn't ignore the growing attention their friendship attracted. "Connell, you don't need to keep showing up," she told him one evening. "People are starting to talk." Connell smiled and replied, "Let them talk. I'm here because I want to be, not because of what anyone thinks." His words comforted her, but a part of her remained cautious. That night, as Adesola lay on her small bed, she found herself thinking about Cunnel. She marveled at his kindness, and how he treated her with respect despite their differences. But she couldn't shake the fear that their friendship might complicate her already difficult life. "Focus, Adesola," she whispered to herself. "You have a dream to chase." Cunnel's growing closeness to Adesola didn't go unnoticed by his wealthy family. His mother, Mrs. Lled, was especially displeased. One afternoon she confronted him in their sprawling living room. "Cunnel, what is this I hear about you spending time with a bread seller?" Her tone dripped with disdain, and Cunnel could feel the judgment in her gaze. "She's not just a bread seller, Mother," Cunnel replied calmly. "She's hardworking, smart, and determined. She has more integrity than most people I know." His mother's eyes narrowed. "You're throwing away your reputation for someone beneath your status. Think about what this will do to our family name." Cunnel sighed, frustrated by her narrow-mindedness. "I'm not interested in status, Mother. Adesola is special, and I won't stop supporting her." The argument ended in a tense silence, but Cunnel left feeling more determined than ever to stand by Adesola. He knew their friendship, and his growing feelings for her, would face challenges, but he was ready to fight for what he believed in. As Adesola and Cunnel grew closer, the gossip on campus reached new heights. Some of Cunnel's friends tried to intervene, warning him to stay away from Adesola. "She's just using you," one of them claimed during a group hangout. "She's only interested in what she can gain from you." Cunnel's temper flared. "Adesola doesn't need anything from me," he snapped. "She's the most independent person I know. Unlike most of us, she's actually earning her way through life." His words silenced the room, but they also alienated him from some of his wealthier friends. Cunnel didn't mind. He had no patience for people who couldn't see Adesola's worth. Adesola, too, faced backlash. Some classmates avoided her altogether, while others openly mocked her. "The bread girl thinks she's special now," one girl sneered in the cafeteria. But Adesola refused to let the negativity break her spirit. She focused on her studies and sales, finding strength in Cunnel's unwavering support. While things were looking up for Adesola, the storm at home began to brew. Cunnel's family, especially his mother, Mrs. Lled, continued to push against his relationship with Adesola. "This girl has nothing to offer you," Mrs. Lled insisted one evening during a family dinner. "She's poor and struggling. You could be with someone who matches your status." Cunnel, now more resolute than ever, stood his ground. "I don't care about status, Mother," he said firmly. "Adesola is a strong, intelligent, and beautiful woman. She has more character and heart than anyone I know." His father, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Cunnel, don't let society dictate your choices. Choose someone who you can respect and love. If that's Adesola, then we will support you." But his mother was unyielding. "This will be the end of your future, Cunnel. Don't let a poor girl ruin your life." The tension between Cunnel and his family reached new heights, but he refused to back down. He knew what he wanted, and nothing, especially societal expectations, would change his mind. He had found someone who understood him, who inspired him to be better. Adesola had become his anchor, and he wasn't about to let her go. Cunnel and Adesola's relationship began to draw more attention, both positive and negative. Their love was now a symbol of defiance, a rich boy rejecting his privileged life for a poor girl who worked tirelessly to survive. While some admired their courage, others saw it as a betrayal. One afternoon, as Adesola prepared to sell her bread on the busy streets of Lagos, she overheard a conversation between two of her classmates. "Did you hear Cunnel Lled has abandoned his family for some bread seller? It's unbelievable." Adesola felt the pang of discomfort, but she quickly brushed it aside. She had always been used to judgment from others. What stung now was the pressure Cunnel was facing because of her. Later that day, Cunnel arrived at her stall with a worried look on his face. "Adesola, I'm sorry, I never wanted you to be dragged into this mess. I hate seeing you suffer because of my family's reaction. Adisula reached out, taking his hand. Colonel, don't apologize. You're not the one causing the pain. We're doing this together. No matter what people say, our love is our choice, and that's all that matters. Colonel smiled, the weight of his struggle lifting slightly. I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Adisula. You're worth every battle. As Adisula and Colonel's relationship grew stronger, an unexpected opportunity arose that could change everything for them. One evening, while Colonel and Adisula were walking through the campus, they were approached by an older man who had seen them from a distance. "Excuse me, young lady," the man said, addressing Adisula. "I couldn't help but notice your dedication. I own a bakery in town, and I've been looking for someone to help me manage it. You have the kind of D that can take this business to the next level. What do you think about a job offer?" Adisula blinked in surprise, unsure whether she had heard him correctly. "A job," she repeated, looking at Colonel. The man nodded. "I'm offering you a position to work as the manager of my bakery, with the possibility of owning it one day if you prove yourself. You'd get a salary that would cover your expenses, and you wouldn't have to sell bread on the streets anymore." Adisula's heart raced, but she felt a wave of hesitation. This could be the opportunity she had always dreamed of, a way to get out of the streets and into a stable career. But she knew that it would mean leaving behind her parents' legacy, the very bread they had sacrificed for. Colonel saw her internal struggle and squeezed her hand. "This is your decision, Adisula. No one is telling you what to do. If this is what you want, I'll support you." Adisula took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her past and her future pressing on her. This offer could change everything, but it also meant making a hard decision about what kind of future she wanted for herself and for the love that had guided her through all her hardships. Adisula stood frozen, her heart pounding as the bakery owner, Mr. Adabanjo, awaited her response. Colonel's steady hand on her shoulder reminded her she wasn't alone. Yet, the weight of the decision bore down on her. "Sir," she began, her voice trembling, "thank you for this incredible offer. I'm honored, but I need some time to think about it." Mr. Adabanjo smiled kindly. "Of course, young lady, take your time, but remember, opportunities like this don't wait forever. My bakery is my legacy, and I see potential in you. Let me know within a week." As he walked away, Colonel turned to her, his face a mixture of pride and concern. "Adisula, this is huge. Why didn't you say yes immediately?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Colonel, it's not that simple. Selling bread on the streets wasn't just about survival. It was my parents' life, their dream to give me a better future. If I take this job, it feels like I'm abandoning their memory." Colonel frowned, struggling to find the right words. "But don't you think they would want you to grow, to take this chance and create something bigger? You'd still honor them, just in a different way." Adisula looked away, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know, Colonel. I need to think." The next day, Adisula arrived at school, with her thoughts still clouded by uncertainty. As she walked through campus, she overheard a familiar voice calling her name. It was Bimp, one of her more outspoken classmates. "Adisula, wait up." Bimp jogged over, a curious smile on her face. "I heard something interesting. Is it true that the bread seller has been offered a bakery job, or is it just campus gossip?" Adisula sighed. "It's true, but I haven't decided yet." Bimp raised an eyebrow. "Haven't decided? Are you serious? This is your way out of all this hustle and ridicule. Why are you hesitating?" "It's complicated," Adisula replied defensively. "My parents gave everything to keep this bread-selling business alive. Taking the job feels like I'm betraying their sacrifices." Bimp rolled her eyes. "Look, I get the sentimental angle, but this is Lagos. Sentiment won't pay your fees or get you through medical school. If you keep holding on to the past, you'll miss the future staring you in the face." Adisula felt her cheeks flush with anger, but couldn't deny the truth in Bimp's words. "You don't understand," she started, but Bimp interrupted. "I understand more than you think. Just don't let fear hold you back, Adesola. Think it through, but don't overthink it." Back at the Lled mansion, Connell faced yet another confrontation with his mother. This time, the stakes felt higher. "Connell, have you completely lost your mind?" Mrs. Lled snapped, slamming her hand on the dining table. "This nonsense with that bread girl has gone too far. Now she's being offered opportunities. What spell has she cast on you?" Connell stood firm, meeting his mother's glare. "Mother, it's not a spell, it's love. Adesola has worked harder than anyone I've ever met, and she deserves every opportunity coming her way. Maybe you should learn to see people for who they are, not what they have." Mrs. Lled scoffed, turning to her husband. "Do you hear him, Ton? He's throwing his future away for this girl." Mr. Lled folded his arms, his expression unreadable. "Connell, I've warned you about making impulsive decisions. Love is fine, but life isn't just about emotions. If this girl drags you down, don't come crying to us." Connell clenched his fists. "Adesola isn't dragging me down. She's lifting me up, and whether you like it or not, I'm standing by her." His mother's eyes narrowed. "Fine, Connell, but if you continue with this foolishness, don't expect our support anymore." Connell's jaw tightened, but he didn't waver. "I don't need your support, I need your understanding, and until you're ready to give it, I'll find my own way." Later that evening, Adesola found herself sitting at her parents' old stall, staring at the bread she was meant to sell. The familiar smell brought memories flooding back, her father's hearty laugh, her mother's gentle encouragement. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "What should I do, Mama, Papa? Am I making the right choices?" A soft voice broke through her thoughts. "It's okay to feel torn." Adesola looked up to see an elderly woman standing before her. She was dressed simply, but had an air of wisdom about her. "I've seen you here before," the woman continued. "Your parents would talk about you, how proud they were of the life they were building for you." Adesola's throat tightened. "They gave everything for me. I don't want to betray them by letting go of their dream." The woman smiled kindly. "Child, dreams evolve. Your parents' dream wasn't to sell bread forever. It was to see you thrive. Taking that job doesn't dishonor them. It fulfills what they started. They would want you to take this chance." Adesola stared at the woman, her words sinking in. For the first time, the decision seemed a little clearer. With the elderly woman's words echoing in her mind, Adesola felt a new sense of clarity. That night, she sat at a small desk in her room, writing a letter to Mr. Adebanjo. In the letter, she expressed her gratitude and explained that she would accept the job. It wasn't an easy decision, but she knew it was the right one, for herself and to honor her parents' sacrifices. The next morning, she met Connell and told him about her choice. "I'm going to take the job," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "I've realized that it's not about letting go of my parents' legacy, it's about building on it. They wanted me to succeed, and I can do that by taking this opportunity." Connell's face lit up with pride. "That's the Adesola I know. I'm so proud of you." As they walked together, they felt a renewed sense of hope. Connell, inspired by Adesola's strength, vowed to confront his family one final time and make them see the woman he loved for who she truly was. Meanwhile, back at the Lled mansion, a seemingly unrelated issue was unfolding. Connell's mother had been going through old files and receipts for their family's various business ventures. Among them, she found a police report from a year earlier, the day they had been rushing to a high-profile meeting in Lagos. She read the report carefully, her hands trembling as she pieced together the details. Their driver had hit a couple selling bread on the roadside, but in the chaos of the day, the incident had been handled quietly, with money given to avoid legal issues. She gasped as she realized who the couple was, Adesola's parents. Tund, she called, her voice shaking. Mr. Lled walked in, confused by his wife's panic. What is it? She handed him the report, her face pale. The accident last year was Adesola's parents. We killed them. Mr. Led's expression hardened as he read the document. The weight of their actions hit him immediately. This can't be, he muttered, pacing the room. Does Connell know about this? Mrs. Lled shook her head. No, but if he finds out, he'll hate us forever. What are we going to do? For the first time in years, the powerful couple felt powerless. Connell arrived home that evening, ready to confront his parents once again. He walked into the living room, where his mother and father sat in tense silence. We need to talk, he began, his tone firm. But before he could say more, his mother stood up, her eyes red with unshed tears. Connell, we need to tell you something first. Her voice cracked as she explained the events of the accident, detailing how their driver had hit Adesola's parents and how they had chosen to cover it up rather than face the consequences. Connell's face drained of color as he listened, his hands balling into fists. You knew, he asked, his voice low and filled with disbelief. All this time, you knew, and you said nothing. You destroyed her family, and then you had the audacity to call her unworthy? Connell, we're sorry, his father said, his voice heavy with guilt. We didn't realize who they were until now. It was a terrible mistake, but we can't change the past. Connell's anger boiled over. You can't change the past, but you can make things right. If you have any decency left, you'll apologize to Adesola and stop standing in the way of our relationship. The following day, Connell brought his parents to meet Adesola. She was at her new job at the bakery when they arrived. Seeing the Lled family enter, she was confused but maintained her composure. Connell stepped forward. Adesola, there's something my parents need to tell you. Mrs. Lled, visibly nervous, took a deep breath and began. Adesola, I don't even know where to start. Last year, on the day of the accident that took your parents' lives, it was our car. Our driver hit them while we were rushing to a meeting. Adesola froze, her heart pounding as the words sank in. What? She whispered, her voice trembling. We're so sorry, Mr. Lled added, his voice filled with regret. We were selfish and careless, and we took everything from you. We can never undo what we've done, but we want to make amends. If there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know. Tears streamed down Adesola's face as she processed the revelation. The pain of her loss resurfaced, but so did the strength she had built over the past year. She looked at Connell, who stood by her side, his eyes pleading for her understanding. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said quietly, her voice shaking. But I appreciate your honesty right now. All I want is peace. Let Connell and me live our lives without interference. That's the only way you can begin to make things right. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet attempts at reconciliation. Connell's parents, humbled by their guilt, made efforts to support Adesola in her new job, even helping her secure better resources for her education. Adesola, though wary, began to soften slightly as she saw their genuine remorse. She focused on her studies and her work, determined to fulfill her dream of becoming a doctor. Connell, true to his word, stood by her every step of the way. Together, they faced the judgment of society and the whispers of disapproval, but their love grew stronger with each challenge. A year later, Adesola graduated from medical school, her dream finally within reach. Connell, now running his own business, proposed to her in a heartfelt ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. Even Mrs. Lled, who had once opposed their relationship, smiled warmly as she embraced Adesola. Thank you for giving us a chance to make things right, she said. Your strength has taught us more than we ever deserved to learn. As Connell and Adesola exchanged vows, their love stood as a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the power of true connection. The bread seller and the wealthy heir had defied all odds, proving that love could heal even the deepest wounds.